Hey everybody, what is up? Thank you so much for joining me. This is a brand new episode of A Better Way with Kirsten podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. Last time we talked about, of course, TMS and the chronic sensations in the body, and we talked about fear. What are the things that are probably still making you feel like you are afraid when it's not even about the symptoms necessarily, but it's about how you are in life, what you do in life, how you interact with other people, and so on. So this is the last episode. Please go back to it if you didn't see it or hear it yet, because we left off talking about how certain things, certain behaviors cause internal anger. And one of these things was when you are saying yes, when you actually want to say no. And the other thing is when you are always wondering, what does this person think of me? What does that person think of me? And then you start adjusting your behaviors based on what they might like. And this thing actually too creates a lot of internal anger. And anger is the topic that we're going to talk about today too. So as you have probably noticed, I've talked a lot about emotions lately as a very important part of TMS recovery. And we've talked about shame quite a bit. You can go back to several episodes and see what we talked about shame. Last one was about fear. And this one we're going to talk about anger, and we're going to talk about suppressing your anger and why this is causing your TMS symptoms. Now, the most important thing that is very, very, very important to make clear right away, because if we don't get that concept, then we're not going to get the whole thing. And that is that even if you are a super kind, caring person, you may still have anger in you. You just may not be aware that you have anger. So here's how it works. Every time you create this internal conflict in you by saying yes if you mean no, by people pleasing, then you're actually creating internal anger. And if you're familiar with Dr. John Sarno's work, and of course Dr. John Sarno, if you haven't heard about him, he was the doctor who kind of started talking about this TMS. He actually came up with this concept of TMS, and he said that the reason why people's backs hurt, and of course that's other symptoms too, but this is what he was mainly talking about, was that they just have so much repressed anger in them. And now again, it can feel like there's absolutely no way this could be the cause, because all the people who have TMS, or most of them, would say that I am not that person. Okay, maybe that applies to somebody else, but me, it doesn't apply. Because you can go ask my friends or my family members, and they will all tell you that you couldn't find the more caring, the more kind of nicer and sweeter person than me. And this can actually really be true. You probably are that way. You do everything for everybody else, but you don't realize that this is exactly what is causing your symptoms. And this is exactly the form of anger that I'm talking about. So the first thing that these people could say, but I always put everybody else first. I always put everybody else first. How can you say that I am angry? But here's the thing. If you always put everybody else first, that means that you're also most of the time neglecting yourself. Of course, there are certain times when you have to put others first. Maybe you have a really small baby, right? You kind of have to do this. But with all the other people, do you have to do this? Do you have to help your, let's say, coworker out, even though you have so much to do yourself? Do you still have to say yes, that I'm going to do this and put this at the top of my priority list? Do you have to, let's say, clean up after your kids or your husband? Or could you ask them to do it? So if you still do these things, you are putting them first because you don't want others to feel discomfort, and you would rather feel that discomfort yourself. And believe it or not, this actually does create anger in you. So this is the form of suppressed anger. You don't say anything. You just do stuff for others because they are more important. And of course, there's always that the people-pleasing component here, because you're doing this because you don't want to harm anybody and you want to be approved, probably because you cannot approve yourself. You cannot validate yourself, and that's why you're doing this. Okay, so the second thing, how we know that you probably have repressed anger, is that you just how would I say this? You don't want to upset anybody, right? So you always want to be the one who's like the peacekeeper, and that again may have been learned from childhood, right? So maybe there is lots of drama in your household, whatever, where you grew up, and you learn that the last thing that I want to do is to upset anybody because that causes a lot of trouble. Maybe one of your parents was like that, or maybe both of your parents were like that. Or maybe you saw it from your older siblings, right? They were the ones who were like yelling and showing all their feelings and slamming the doors. This is my experience. This is what I saw. And it was something that you learned that, okay, I don't ever want to do this. I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to upset my mom because things are already difficult. So I just learned that I don't want to do this. And you may have learned something similar. So you're like, okay, it's so much better that I don't upset anybody. But what happens is that you also then don't express yourself. And you may have also learned that, okay, slamming the doors and yelling is the only way to express anger because your older sibling maybe did that, but you have no awareness that you can be angry and express it in a healthy way. By the way, this is something that we're going to talk about in my upcoming emotions course too, like how to express anger in a healthy way. And I think that's why a lot of people are afraid of it. They've only seen the negative side of it. They've only seen like how people, when they get angry, they can get like abusive or violent or yell, and that can be really scary. By the way, if you are a highly sensitive person like I am too, then yelling, like raising voice is really scary. It just feels so uncomfortable for me. It has always been like I just want to run away. And because there was some yelling when I grew up, like I learned to completely avoid this. Never raise my voice, and if somebody raised their voice, I just like get scared, right? And that's totally a trauma response. And so now, when you don't want to upset anybody, you may think that, okay, things can get really out of hand and really ugly, so I don't want to do this thing that I saw, so I better not show my anger. But this anger then goes inside you, and then when it goes inside you, then it starts causing you trouble. And another way how you are suppressing your anger is that you are afraid of any conflict. So you're basically willing to put up with anything as long as there's no conflict. You can think about it. Where does this show up in your life? I'm pretty sure that it does. You just walk on eggshells because, God forbid, you upset anybody and there will be conflict. Then you just cannot handle it. It's like the scariest thing for you, right? And then again, this is probably from childhood. You saw maybe some bad examples and you just became really fearful of that. And you learned it's better to push down what I am feeling because otherwise that might cause conflict. And we are so afraid of conflict again because we may have seen only one way of dealing with conflict, which is actually not dealing. It's just like making like a big drama out of it. But there are healthy ways to resolve conflicts too. It's just that we never saw these healthy ways, and now we are afraid. We are afraid that, okay, when there's a conflict, confrontation, that again means there's going to be yelling, there's going to be shouting, there's going to be something bad going on, like super fearful, right? We remember, our brains remember, also our subconscious mind remembers a lot of things, and our conscious minds in this case too remembers what happened when there was conflict present. And now we've decided that absolutely no way, I'm not going to get in a conflict ever. That's the worst thing. So you start pushing down your thoughts, your opinions, out of the fear that that might cause a conflict. And this is again how you create anger inside, because you are not expressing yourself. You are not in alignment. Like I said in my last podcast too, you're not in alignment with yourself if you agree with everybody just so that you can avoid conflict. What you really need to do is to speak up and understand that yes, it may cause a little bit of like friction there. Maybe not everybody's going to like it, and then we're going to resolve it in a healthy way. We can talk about it, we can discuss this thing, right, with this other person, and we don't have to, it doesn't necessarily have to turn into like a massive conflict, right? So we have to realize that there are healthier ways of resolving problems. Like there are times when we have to confront somebody, and it's a healthy thing to do for our own well-being too. You don't want to be like pushed down all the time. You don't want to be pushed down and feel like, okay, no matter what I do or say, it doesn't matter. These things do matter, but you have to say them. You have to voice your opinions. You have to say if you don't like something. And I get it that it can be so scary. Believe it or not, it has been super scary for me too. And it's just little by little with small things. And you have to catch yourself in this moment, right? Like when there's a little bit of something that you don't like or you disagree with, then you may easily think, okay, I know what I should do right now. I know that I should speak up. I know that I should voice my opinion, but I just can't right now. I'm like frozen almost. I can't. You have to, in this very moment, you have to use this opportunity and start practicing. You start saying what you mean. You start voicing your opinions. You start being okay if the other person doesn't agree, and understand that you can talk the problem through. It doesn't have to turn into like a massive, terrible thing. It doesn't have to go this way, but it's just the fear that we have in our minds that, okay, this is going to happen, therefore I have to avoid conflict. So all these things will cause internal anger in you if you always put everybody else first and you put yourself last. If you do things for other people, no matter how inconvenient it is for you, you don't really honor your wants and needs. You don't speak up. You're people pleasing. You are just, giving everything away so that somebody else could feel better. If this is you, then you do have repressed anger and you just are not aware of it. And so please don't take it as an offense when I say that. Yes, you have anger. You do have anger. Don't take it like, oh my goodness, like she's telling you that I'm like a bad, angry person. I don't say that you're a bad person. I'm just saying that you do have unexpressed anger, and this is what is at least partly causing your symptoms. A lot of times the emotions are not very acknowledged. The focus is only on like, okay, calm your brain down, tell it that it's okay. But if you have already done this and you haven't seen improvement, then you really have to look at your emotions. I wish that people started looking at that earlier. And I'm only saying this because this was really what made the shift for me. Acknowledging my emotions, working with them, and then turning the situation that maybe caused this intense emotion into more positive. Like, what is the silver lining there? What's the positive that I can find? Can I go into gratitude after that, but without skipping that emotional part, this like acknowledgement that, okay, I am really angry right now, and then after that you're going to turn to gratitude and positivity. So I hope that you found today's episode helpful. If you don't have my Strong and Sensitive course yet, please make sure that you get it. It's a totally free course, and it is meant for people who are highly sensitive and or who have TMS symptoms, and it helps them to get their mind right, how they can start recovering. What are the things that they maybe haven't paid attention to yet, but they need to start working on? And at the same time, it helps you to get back to exercise, a little bit of physical exercise, and I even give you some free workouts to try out. So go ahead and check out this program. It is called Strong and Sensitive, and you can find it in the show notes, and you can find it in the YouTube description too. It's 100% free. It is 14 days long, and every day you're going to get an email into your inbox with the next lesson. This is all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Take care.